Julia Garner stars as a struggling dancer who's drawn in by dark forces in the new psychological thriller Apartment 7A. Buy it on digital or stream it now on Paramount+. Rated R. Head to ParamountPlus.com/Apartment7A to try it free.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Hi, and welcome to this special episode of Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby, and I'll be telling you some spooky tales written by kids. Adults who may be listening, these stories go in order from youngest to oldest and contain themes that may be a little too scary for some little ones. Let's start the Halloween fun, shall we? First up is Madeline, age 5. Once there was a cheerleader. They cheerleaded for the football team. People thought they were regular cheerleaders, but they were zombies. They cheered at the game and did splits and backflips. People started cheering with them, and then whoever cheered with them, they would turn into zombies. Everyone was zombies. They were green and whitish, and they walked weird. They, dragged their feet. People were scared of the zombies because they were scared they would eat their brains. The zombies tried to eat the football players' brains, but their helmets protected them. Also, if you were wearing a bike helmet, that could keep you safe. The football players tackled the zombies, and because zombies did not wear helmets, they could knock their heads off, and the zombies died. From the mind of Bridget, age 5. Once upon a time, there was a little girl and her friend. They were camping out at the stabbing cabin at the little girl's house. Then, there was a ghost that came and started to tap on the window. They ran away. The night was getting black and dark and spooky. They moved the camp to another cabin. The ghost found them. He started howling in the night. Then they ran. They found the little girl's house and stayed the night. They were super scared that the ghost would come again, but they didn't see it anymore. Then one night, the ghost returned. The girls realized that their friendship had created this evil. They needed to do some research. They figured out that the ghost was Hurricane Stu in 1885. The ghost died in the last hurricane that flooded the town. The ghost only came back on stormy nights. She talked to her mommy and she realized it was her great-great-grandfather. He was just checking in. Thanks, Grandpa. Lyanna F., 5.5. Once upon a time, there was a ghost in a forest, and it was dancing with me when I was eating pumpkin pie. There was a vampire coming along with all the monsters in the woods to play with me. Ariel came with all other princesses, along with 2 dogs named Austin and Posy. Then all the monsters, princesses, and Ariel went away because they were super tired. They woke up super mean, but also a little nice. They got lollipops from me when they were being mean. The lollipop ended up turning them nice. Then all the mean monsters turned happy again forever. Sienna F., 5.5. I went into a forest with my friend named Nora. I love her so much. A monster came with us and brought snacks and water and Gatorade. Then we walked in the forest to find some berries, and I kept eating them. The berries made me fall asleep. A witch then came and put me in her fireplace. I then died and never saw the monster and Nora again. Then I became a ghost, and the monster and Nora saw me, and they were like, "Ah! What is that?" They screamed so loud that I stopped being a ghost and turned normal. The Abandoned Forest by Apollo Arthur, age 7. Once upon a time, there was a house in a forest. In it lived a brother and a sister with their mother. They were camping outside. Their mom said they could be outside by themselves because they're older. The mom fell asleep inside the house. That meant they could do anything they wanted, but couldn't let their mom know. The brother said, "How about we go to the forest?" "But the sign says no going at nighttime," the sister said. They saw 2 eyes that were shining in the deepest part of the forest. They went there anyway. The sister escaped before it happened. The ruckus happened. There were 3 beasts. One had a sinister face. Another one looked like a bug with horror eyes. And the last beast was a monster with 9 giant eyes and a snake tongue. The brother was spooked. The beast with a sinister face chopped the brother's head off. The end. Esther, age 8. The Vampire Ghost. Once upon a time, there was a house. Not just any house, but a haunted house. And in the haunted house, there lived a ghost. But the ghost was a vampire ghost. The vampire ghost can go through things, but grab things too. In a small village was a cottage. In the cottage lived 2 sisters. The youngest sister went out and sat on a bench. Then the vampire ghost came and bit her. Then her sister came and found her. Oh, their names were Jenny and Susan. Jenny was the oldest and Susan was the youngest. When Jenny found Susan, she brought her back to her bed. Susan became a ghost vampire, and she went to the haunted house. Jenny didn't know where Susan was. She thought she went on vacation. Brody, age 8. Chapter 1. The Peephole. My mom is always telling me, "Don't look through the peephole, there could be someone there." But one day, I looked through it, and an eye slid into place. It said to me,
"Watch out for the eye."
Then it disappeared. I told my mom, and she threw me in the basement. I saw an eye, so I went to it, and my mom came down to me and turned into a monster. Chapter 2. The Mutant. Once I was walking through the swamp until I saw a mutant frog. It jumped at me, so I ran home. But I forgot I had eaten rotten berries. The mutant frog followed me home and then transformed into a giant. Kane, age 9. In the small mountain town, Lizzie owns a bakery. For tourist season, she hires Kat to work at night. In the middle of the night, Kat calls Lizzie to say she hears something under the floors.
"I hear something under the floor."
Lizzie tells her it's an old building and not to worry. The next morning, Lizzie turns on the TV to see her bakery. The reporter says, "There was a murder at 54th Street." Lizzie hurries to find the report still outside. She asks the reporter what happened, but all that could be found was a broken window. Lizzie is sad about her friend. She cleans up the window as her favorite customer, who lives upstairs, Teddy, walks in. He heard what happened to Kat and asks if he would be the night baker to help her out. Even though Lizzie is worried, she thinks Teddy can take care of himself. She says yes. Teddy is excited to start baking. He is in the middle of baking donuts when he hears something outside. He runs upstairs to call Lizzie. She says to turn on the TV. He does, and the news is saying that the restaurant owners need to guard their shops as another crime, a break-in at a cafe, happened. Teddy runs downstairs, sees the tape on the broken window ripped. Inside is the dead body of a burglar. Lizzie wakes up the next morning and turns on the TV. Again, her bakery is on the news. Teddy is there with the reporter saying another dead body is in her bakery. Lizzie runs to the bakery to confront Teddy. Teddy says that the man was dead when he came back from calling her. A little boy tugs on her shirt. She looks down and he says, "Haven't you heard about the stalker?" Teddy sneaks into the forest with a cupcake. When Teddy was a boy, gnomes saved him from a bear, so he makes sure to bring his friends treats from Lizzie's bakery. He puts the cupcake at the old tree. When his friend the gnome comes down, Teddy asks for help again. As he eats, the gnome agrees. Teddy sneaks back home. The next couple of days are scary, but nothing but the floorboard noises happen. Teddy bakes a cake for his friend, the engineer's birthday. Teddy brings the cake to his friend's party. His friend asks Teddy what's wrong, and he tells him about the murders. His friend smiles. He is working on a giant robot that may help Teddy. Teddy now has a plan to trap the stalker. That night, Teddy is at work, baking cookies. He hears sounds under the floorboards. Freaked out, he runs out of the building. He sees his friend dragging the robot through the alley. They start to set up the robot while Teddy explains the noises. From the door, they see shadows coming through the floor. The shadows start to come towards them. Just then, the gnomes come down the alley for their nightly treat of cupcakes.
Hi, guys.
They see Teddy and the engineer and help Teddy into the robot. When he is in, they tell him a spell to help trap the shadow. They watch, scared, as the shadow grows to the size of the giant robot. When the spell, a beam of light goes from the robot into the shadow creature. This makes the stalker scream and go into the tunnels again. The gnomes tell Teddy the spell of light makes it so the stalker cannot come into the light anymore, or it will die. Now, the townspeople of this mountain town make sure to never be in the dark again, forever afraid of the monster. Elsie, age 9. The doll my grandma gave me. My parents were out at the movie theaters. Me and my friends were having a sleepover. We were spending the night watching all good horror movies. We were halfway through Child's Play when the lights flickered and went out. "Dang it," said Mia. "I guess we have to go to sleep now," said Michael. Everyone agreed, so we went to bed. It was around midnight when we heard a scream, then another and another, scream after scream. Then, quiet. We were all horrified. I said, "Maybe we should go see what's going on." "Are you crazy, London? We can't just go out there with whatever caused those screams," Kyle said. "But what if someone's hurt? We need to go check," I replied. "I agree with Kyle," said Mia. "Same," said Michael. "We need to," started Michael, before suddenly starting to scream. The power picked that moment to come back on. Michael was gone. We were all scared, but we knew we had to find our friend. So we left the bedroom to search for our friend. We hadn't gone far before we saw blood, a trail of it, leading into the kitchen. Mia screamed. We all looked down in horror at our friend's body. His head was gone, and in its place was the head of a doll. We knew we weren't safe, so we ran outside to the closest neighbor for help. When we knocked on Mrs. Simpson's door, it creaked open. We walked inside, scared of what we would find. The closet was ajar, with a puddle of blood leaking out. We opened the closet to find Mrs. Simpson cut entirely in half. Tiny doll-sized footprints walking away from the closet in her blood. We ran and tried house after house, but no one was alive. We were walking past the playground when we saw a piece of cloth hanging from a tree branch. "That looks like the cloth from my doll," I shouted. "What doll?" said Mia. "The doll my grandma gave me," I whispered. "That's right," said in a soft voice. And we heard Kyle scream. Mia and London turned in circles looking, but Kyle had disappeared. We decided to run to the police for help. When we got there was Kyle. His head was missing, and in its place was another doll head. We turned to run when Mia started screaming. I looked behind me to find her, and she was already dead, in the same gruesome way my other friends died. I ran and didn't stop until I saw something that made me stumble to a stop. There was a bloody knife on the ground. I looked up, and the doll was there. I turned to flee, but my friends were blocking my path. I felt a sharp pain. Then nothing. Kyle, Mia, and Michael woke up the next morning, and London was missing. The police searched everywhere and couldn't find her. London was never seen again. Sonny, age 9. Once upon a time, there was a man. He went camping by himself, and on the last night of his camping trip, he goes to sleep and he has a nightmare that his son was being eaten by a bear, and then wakes up and hears scratching noises. He brings a shotgun out ready to fight, but realized it was his fire pit. He accidentally walks into the fire pit and burns to death. Then he's nowhere to be found. The next day, his wife and kid are worried and call the police, and they find a skull in the fire pit. The end. Aiden, age 9.5. The zombie apocalypse. 1 hour before the apocalypse. Marcus, Joe, Sarah, Joe's dog, and Sarah's cat were going trick-or-treating. "Which house should we go to?" asked Marcus. "That one," Joe exclaimed, pointing over at a large house. "Okay," Marcus said. Then they all walked to the oversized house. They reached the door, then pressed the doorbell. "Trick or treat!" they yelled. Nobody answered. They rang it again. "Trick or treat!" Still, nobody answered. They kept ringing the doorbell for 5 minutes, then finally, someone answered.
Take this,
He said.
It's an ineffective injection. But whatever you do, don't flick the switch on the injection.
They all went away after he said that. 15 minutes before the apocalypse. "Marcus, why did he give us that injection?" asked Joe. "I don't know," Marcus said back. "But let's flick the switch." "What? No," said Sarah. "Remember, he told us." Marcus didn't hear her and flicked it. The injection looked weird and creepy, and then Marcus threw it. The injection accidentally hit someone and screamed and collapsed on the floor. They all looked at him in shock. Then when he stood back up, he was a zombie. Sarah, Marcus, and Joe all screamed at the top of their lungs and ran away. 1 hour after the apocalypse. The kids were all hiding in a shop called Weapons and More. They decided they needed to grab weapons to defend themselves. Sarah decided to grab a strong bat. Marcus grabbed a pistol, but he still felt unprotected, so he grabbed a spear just in case. And then Joe settled on a sharp knife. They knew that if they did not do anything about the apocalypse, the infection would spread through the city, and then the world. 2 hours and 35 minutes after the invasion. They have been fighting for an hour and a half. "Marcus, we shouldn't have flicked that switch," Sarah said. "I do not know, but ah!" Marcus was interrupted with a scream. Sarah and Marcus looked back fastly. Joe was there on the floor with a knife in his leg. Marcus ran to Joe. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked nervously, but Joe did not answer. He just laid there, looking dead. Marcus rushed to get a super aid kit. He sprinted to Joe and helped him with the aid. Seconds later, zombies broke the whole store. The kids were all crowded. Ah! Marcus and Sarah screamed, But Joe couldn't. Marcus threw the pistol to Sarah, and she shot the zombies instantly. Joe started talking. "Help," he mumbled. "I am," Marcus said back. "I can't hold them much longer," Sarah screamed. When Marcus got the knife out of Joe's leg, he was enraged. One of his best friends could die. He stabbed the knife through the zombie that got Joe in the head. 3 hours after the invasion. They have been fighting the zombies for ages. "I have a plan," said Sarah. "I saw a minigun here. Let's use it." Marcus searched for it. "There it is," he said joyfully. He grabbed it. "This thing is too strong." He shot all of the zombies. "Nice," Joe said. He was feeling a bit better. But then the boss zombie came. It leaped to them. Marcus grabbed the minigun. He shot it. The zombie boss was a bit hurt, but still fine. Then the zombie grabbed the minigun and snapped it like a twig. He then grabbed Marcus. "Ah!" Marcus screamed. Sarah charged at the zombie with Marcus's spear. She stabbed it through the boss zombie's leg. The boss zombie roared and dropped Marcus. He came to Sarah and threw her out of the destroyed shop. Joe was furious. He got up. He sneaked past the boss zombie and grabbed a rocket launcher. He aimed at its face. Bam! Joe shot it. The boss zombie fell and was in pain. Joe shot it several times to make sure he was defeated. "We did it!" Joe exclaimed. The infection did not even get through the whole city. Marcus ran to Joe. "Yeah!" he exclaimed back. They ran out of the building. Sarah was laying there, bruised. "Are you okay?" Joe asked. "Yeah," Sarah said. She came up and walked to them. Did we win?" "Sure thing," Marcus said. Then they all celebrated. But a few minutes later, something was wrong with Joe. Something was inside his mind.
"This will be fun,"
An unknown being said in Joe's head in a demonic voice. The end. Till next year's part 2. This story was a joint effort by Rory, age 10, and Millie, age 8. Anne and the House of Horrors. Anne and her friends were at a Halloween party. They decided to leave and play hide and seek in the woods because that was scarier and it was Halloween. Anne was the seeker, and she had found a couple of her friends. She found a scary mansion while she was looking, and she had never seen it before, and she knew the whole woods like the back of her hand. She went in thinking that her friends were hiding in there, and she brought the people she had already found, just in case. She went in, and the first red flag for her was that the paintings on the walls seemed to have their eyes moving. But she and her friends pressed on. They went in until they reached a turn. She went left, but her friends went right. She thought her friends had followed her, but they hadn't. Then, when she found out they hadn't, she had already gotten lost, so her only choice was to keep on going. Meanwhile, her friends think Anne is following them. But there were 2 burglars in the house, and they got Anne's friends. Finally, Anne saw a door in the hallway. When she went in, the ceilings were dripping with blood. So she immediately screamed and ran out as fast as she could. She found a turn and decided to still go straight. After that, there was the biggest hallway with 6 doors, 3 on each side. But the burglars were hiding behind one of the doors, and sadly, that was the door she checked first. So she slammed the door in their face and ran like her life depended on it. She went in a different door and ended up having to go into stealth mode since the only exit was also the entrance, and the thieves were waiting outside. She found one of her friends, Christina, in that room. She decided to untangle her friend from the ropes she was in, and that friend knew where their other friend was. They decided to look around for an escape, and they find in the couch a trap door that leads to the other side of the house. They hear the burglars bust down the door as the trapdoor is closing. Luckily, the secret passage led to the other friend, Kevin's room. There was a phone in Kevin's room, so they called the police. As they hang up, the thieves come through the trapdoor and they all run out like their lives depend on it. When the police got there, the mansion had disappeared. Luckily, Anne, Christina, and Kevin got out alive. Traumatized and injured, but alive. The end. Sawyer, age 10. The Man in the Fog. FYI, this is fiction. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when I woke up and turned on the TV to see the news. After the news, I went to get a coffee at the cafe next to the woods. As I was walking, I saw a man running out of the forest before he collapsed on the road next to me. I ran over to make sure he was okay. I bent down and saw that his face was gone. No skin, no eyes, just flesh. I looked into the woods and saw something stare back at me and then run off into the fog. It was around 10 feet tall, and it had piercing white eyes, and it was holding something in its hand. I couldn't tell what it was, but it was something. My attention snapped back to the man, and I called 911 on my phone. An ambulance came. They told me to go home after asking a couple of questions. So, I went home. I couldn't forget about that thing in the fog, so I decided to call my friend Alex to tell her about the thing. She said she had seen it too. We decided to meet up at her house, and then we would go to the forest to figure out what it was. I got to her house, and she gave me a flashlight and a walkie-talkie. I knew right then she wanted to split up. I nodded, and we headed into the forest. I walked for a little before I saw someone about 70 feet away from me. It stood tall, towering above me. Its glowing white eyes stared deep into my soul. I knew right there and then that it was the thing. Grabbed my walkie-talkie and started running towards the entrance to the forest, telling Alex to get out of there. I got to the entrance and I was outside the cafe. I saw Alex running with the thing behind her, chasing her and making strange noises. She ran into my arms and we took a step back. It stopped at the entrance to the forest and just looked at us. Then walked deeper into the forest. We went back to my place, and we were both out of breath. We still weren't sure what that thing was, but we just decided to call it The Man in the Fog. By Callie, age 11. The 5 Pillars and 5 Crosses. A whole family was hiking. There was 1 boy and 2 girls. The girls were named May and Lily. The boy was named Steve. The 2 sisters were chasing their brother, and their mom said not to go too far, but they got really far away from their parents and got lost. The only food and water in the wet, cold, far forest were berries and trail mix with raisins, which was their least favorite food. Their favorite part of the trail mix were the M&Ms and peanuts, but Steve was almost allergic to everything. Once they got too far, May warned Steve and Lily that we should go back, guys. Steve and Lily replied, "No, we don't want to go," in unison. "Ugh, fine," May replied. Steve and Lily cheered joyfully when they saw a black shadow passing by, and they jumped because it was so fast and abrupt that they could not react at all. May got dragged away by a creature while screaming. Lily and Steve forgot all about her and their parents. All they saw was a big, drooling dog creature. It was 3-headed, but they didn't remember much of anything and just kept on walking. Once they got to the top of the mountain, it was already 9 p.m., so they used their hoodies for blankets and backpacks for pillows. At 2 a.m., they saw a tribe or maybe a cult off in the distance circling the monster while praising it and worshiping it. Once they fell back to sleep, 8 o'clock a.m. Steve realized his little sister was not there. He went down the mountain by himself, and walked into the forest and went in a cave. In that cave, he saw the 3-headed monster asleep. He went to the other part of the cave, and he saw 5 pillars surrounded by 5 crosses. The first cross had his dad. The second cross had his mom. The third cross had Lily. The fourth cross had May. And the 5th cross had no one. It had nothing except for a tiny piece of paper taped on the cross that said, Steve. He tried not to scream, but he could not hold it in, and he screamed as loud as a banshee, followed by a series of noises. Monster. Growls roughly. Steve. Nervous laugh. When Steve said, Good puppy, he saw 5 claws and 17 rows of teeth on the 3 heads. The first head looked hungry. The 2 others looked maybe depressed. He kept on screaming. The monster bit down. Crunch. Splat. The new psychological thriller Apartment 7A is now streaming on Paramount+. Julia Garner stars as a struggling young dancer who suffers a devastating injury. Soon she finds herself drawn in by dark forces when a peculiar, well-connected older couple promises her a shot at fame. Diane Wiest, Kevin McNally, and Jim Sturgis also star in the Paramount Plus original movie. Buy Apartment 7A on digital or stream it now on Paramount Plus. Rated R. Head to ParamountPlus.com/Apartment7A to try it free.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Go to Blinds.com for 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So, what's the mark?
The Eye of Kithiska. From the world of Dragon Age comes a new tale.
The Eye was crafted centuries ago by a powerful dreamer.
Listen to me. You've been tricked. We have to put this back and leave.
I'm sorry, but I won't let you pay for my mistakes.
The Eye will destroy us.
Dragon Age, Vows and Vengeance. Listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts.
Noelle, age 13. The word open flashes on the window of my boutique. I step inside and turn some classical music on to set the mood. I suppose it's time for another grueling day. People aren't buying things as often due to the increase of missing persons on the very street my shop is located on. I suppose it's fair, though it only seems to happen at night. I don't think it's anything to worry about. I slide into the other room, landing my eyes on the new dress I made. Oh, how lovely the dress is. The seam allowance is perfect, and the fabric is just the right amount of stiff and stretchy. I place my hands on it, proud of what I've created. I sigh. This is exasperating. I've worked so hard on this piece, yet I doubt anyone will buy it. What am I to do? There isn't a chance I could casually wear this outside. Then, a thought popped into my head. Of course, though someone may not wear it as an everyday piece, I could get a model to make a contribution. This could be my chance. I dash into my office and call every model and company that might say yes. After a few hours of calling numerous times, someone finally answers. Hello? Oh, yes! I frantically answer. Hello, my name is Niam, and I'm just wondering if you'd be interested in modeling for my boutique. I could give you a discount on my wide selection of wonderful dresses, corsets, and skirts. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I shall visit later today. What is it called? It's called Fleur Boutique, I answer delightfully. Perfect. See you later. She hangs up. Finally, everything is going to plan. She will be a wonderful contribution to elevating my piece. Just wonderful. few slow hours pass by, and nobody has even looked at my shop. This is ridiculous. The amount of missing people isn't even that large. I start to calm down a bit after I remember that girl. She's bound to make my piece sell. A wide grin crawls onto my face as I imagine how it'll look with her contribution. It will be absolutely beautiful. I snap out of my daydream as I see what I assume is her stepping into my shop. Welcome, I greet her with a warm smile. Hello, I'm here to discuss the modeling. You're Niam, right? I get so excited that I almost forget to reply. Yes, I'm Niam, right this way. I seat her at a couch in my shop and get her some tea. I'm pleased to see that she has already started sipping away at it. I'll be right back. I just need to get the dress you'll be trying on. I frantically dash to my sewing room and grab the piece. How wonderful, I think to myself. I know exactly what to do with her. I bring out the dress, sitting perfectly on a mannequin. Oh, how lovely! A warm smile appears on her face. And it's my favorite color. I watch as she steps closer to the dress, in awe of the intricate pattern I carefully created on every inch of the dress. Her hands wrap around the piece as she twirls it around to see the back. I notice her smile get bigger. This is truly the perfect opportunity. Would you like to try it on now? I mutter, even though the answer's obvious. Of course! It's so beautiful! I would love to! I nod my head to her reply and bring her to the changing room. All right, I say with a smile. I'll be right outside if you need anything. She looks at me and nods in gratitude. I go back to my room and prepare my supplies. A pair of scissors, a knife, a needle, thread. The list goes on. At first, I thought of using the sharper stuff first. But then, the blood would ruin my wonderful dress. I had to take a less messy approach. I look back at the tea set in the other room. How clueless, I think to myself as I imagine her passing out after her airways close up. Humans can be so unaware. A wide grin appears on my face as I hear her struggling to breathe. I slowly walk to the changing room. Are you doing all right? It sounds like the corset may be a bit too tight on you, I say in the most believable concerned voice I can do. The only reply I receive is a thud on the ground. I can't help but giggle in excitement. I walk in and drag her lifeless body out into the sewing room and take the dress off her. What should I do first? I stare at the tools and decide on the knife. My hands run along her arms as I decide the perfect point to cut at. Blood spills on my floor as I chop her limbs off. I imagine what it'll end up looking like. Maybe I'll use her flesh to make leather details on the dress. Or maybe I'll use her eyes as gemstone accents. I then carve out her eyes and proceed to bash her head with a hammer. No need for that. I already have the extra fabric from all my other victims, and I'm only using this one for accents after all. After the job is done with dismembering her, I sew on bits of leather at the sleeves and on the corset, along with her beautiful hazel eye as a gemstone at the top of the corset. And oh, how lovely it is! The soft green of the dress complements her beautifully, just like she said. She was truly a wonderful contribution. Desmond, age 13. The last survivor. In a world swallowed by silence, where the echoes of civilization faded into the void, one lone survivor named Alex wandered through the remnants of humanity. The sky once a brilliant blue, now hung heavy and gray, shrouded in a thick mist that clung to everything like a shroud. Buildings stood as hollow shells, their windows shattered and their walls crumbling. A graveyard of memories. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Alex had lost track of time. Each morning brought a chilling sense of déjà vu. Same empty streets, same discarded possessions of lives once lived. The absence of other people gnawed at his mind. A relentless ache that grew sharper with each passing day. Every day was the same pointless day. At first, Alex found solace in routine. "All right, let's see what I can find today," he would say, scouring the remnants of stores for food and supplies. But soon, the loneliness twisted into something sinister. The shadows in the corner seemed to shift, whispering secrets in a language only he could hear. "No one's coming back," he muttered to himself. "You're all alone." One night, as Alex lay in a makeshift bed of torn blankets, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around his mind like a serpent coiling tighter.
"You're alone,"
they hissed.
"There's no one left. No one to care about you."
The darkness felt alive, pressing against his skin, and he could almost feel the breath of unseen entities hovering just out of sight. "Stop it!" Alex shouted to the void in his mind, his voice trembling. "You're not real!" But the darkness only mimicked sounds of his friends and family that echoed in the empty room. Days passed, and reality began to blur. Time had no meaning, and meaning didn't make sense anymore. Alex would catch glimpses of figures darting in the periphery, faint shadows that vanished when looked at directly. "Am I going insane?" he wondered aloud, gripping his head in frustration. "I just want to talk to someone. Is that so much to ask?" One dreary afternoon, while scavenging in an old library, Alex stumbled upon a dusty journal. The pages were yellowed, filled with frantic scrawls of a previous occupant who had documented their descent into madness. "Time is pointless," the last entry read. "And I'm gonna die alone. This can't be. A survivor died before I did?" Alex whispered to the empty room, a shiver running down his spine. But the words felt hollow, the echo of his voice swallowed by the silence. The isolation became unbearable. Alex tried to reach out, speaking into the emptiness, hoping for a response. "Is anyone there?" The question echoed back, only to be swallowed by the silence. The longer the silence lingered, the more it twisted into a voice, a constant reminder of the isolation that closed in like a vice. As the weeks dragged on, reality splintered further. Alex began experiencing vivid hallucinations, visions of loved ones long gone, their faces contorted in anguish, reaching out as if to say goodbye. "Join us," they whispered. "You don't have to be alone." The book was right. "I'm gonna die alone," Alex cried, clutching his head. "I don't even want to live without my friends." The sweet release of death was intoxicating, a promise of relief from the crushing solitude. One night, the shadows thickened, and the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony.
"You want to see your mother again?
Finally be free from this madness."
the voices urged.
If you join us.
I can't! Alex shouted, but the words felt weak against the encroaching dread. The thought of relief from the unending torment became a siren song, beckoning with the promise of peace. With trembling hands, Alex scrawled a final message on the wall of the abandoned building, a farewell to the world that had turned its back. I'm sorry. I tried to hold you, but I guess I can't handle this place we call Earth. The words felt heavy, like a weight of despair. As the last light of day faded into darkness, Alex stepped to the top of the highest building he once knew as home, surrendering to the silence that had become both a tormentor and a comfort. Maybe it's time to rest, he whispered to himself. He took one look down and took one step forward. In that moment, the whispers faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The world, once filled with noise and chaos, had finally fallen into a profound silence, a silence that would last forever. No sounds, no people, no wildlife, nothing. Lyla, instinct. What is a mother's first instinct to their child going missing? The common answer would be to scream and cry. At least that's what most mothers tend to do anyway. Maybe even curse or beg a higher being for them back. They might worry until they eventually lose themselves, dig their own grave, and suffer in the process. Those things do seem rather astonishing to me. Do people really care for others like that, or is it something so raw and emotional that only mothers seem to have? I mean, who would really give up their own life for another? Who else would really be so selfless to do things to benefit another person? Certainly not me. Susan has been missing for 3 days now. All the other mothers have been asking how I'm holding up, but I don't feel any different. I'm not happy, though, with Susan. I never was. But I was surely less sad. Susan was my only child, so naturally, I should be shaken up. I should be actively trying to find her, but no. Instead, I sat in the middle of my kitchen, nursing a cup of tea, now cold since the morning. Crowds of people were in my house. Nameless mothers coming to sit and reassure me, and their husbands patting George's back. I kept my head downcast while they talked with kind words and empty prayers, saying how it might be hard to cope and there was still hope. But I didn't want hope. What time even was it? I didn't lift my head to look at the big clock on the wall. Something I have learned in the last 3 days is to never appear bored at a function when people have come and tried to comfort you about your missing child. But I didn't need the comfort. I didn't need the prayers. I didn't need Susan. George talked to me before everyone came. He said that I should be as scared for Susan as he was. He begged me to be scared for her, but I couldn't. Nothing he said could convince me otherwise. When the police asked what happened, my thoughts drifted back to the first day when me and George had Susan. There was something about her that stood out to me, even when she was just a newborn. Maybe it was the way her eyes darted around the room, or the way she would not smile throughout her entire childhood. It made me wonder whether she was smiling now, tucked away somewhere. Will she ever find peace? Or was she happy to be away from me? If she was, would it be as enjoyable as I feel? A year after having her, I started drinking. Susan wasn't a normal child. She wasn't a child I wanted to have. I never told George that Susan was the problem, but I felt like he knew from the look in my eyes. In a way, he feared her too. but that never stopped him from being there for her. And I wondered how he could do it so strongly, and how I would do it if I could ever harness the strength. Next year, my instinct was to run away from this family and never turn back, hoping that will be the best for Susan and George. I never did. I couldn't bring myself to, no matter how much I wanted to do it. I watched George become the favorite of Susan, and how there was always some sort of fiery hate behind her eyes when she looked at me. I understood that perfectly fine. It didn't sting as much as it was supposed to. Every night, I silently wished that someone would take Susan away from the family and never return her. The urge to do it myself was stifling, but I couldn't carry a weight like that on my shoulders. So I waited. I remember one particular day, Susan came home from school and wouldn't stop talking about her day to George. It wasn't a common occurrence for her to be so enthusiastic about the day. There wasn't a play or a ballet show we had to go to. For all I knew, it was a regular day. Later that night, I asked George about her enthusiasm, and he told me she had made a new friend. I didn't think much of it back then, and if so, I knew George had it under control. Susan would talk more openly about her new friend at dinner and how she wishes she could soon live in the woods with them. Children do have strange fantasies. With that thought, I snapped back into reality. George was sitting in front of me, looking at me, as I quickly scanned the room, seeing the worried faces of our friends. Next to George was my cup of tea, shattered and forgotten on the floor. George ushered me into a hug after realizing that I had now awoken from my blackout, whispering about how scared he was. I didn't listen to those words. I figured it out.
I know where Susan is.
I spoke. I considered not telling him the location, giving George a reason to lose himself in father-driven instinct. Maybe we could both suffer instead of just me. But when I looked at his face, I knew I didn't want to be cruel. He loved his daughter, whether I did, and I couldn't take that away. Next thing I know, I'm leaving my house, running at full speed with George by my side. I realized halfway there that I never told George where we were going, but I didn't bother stopping now, though Susan wasn't my intention of running fast. I knew something with Susan was. I don't think I have ever run that fast in my life. The trees rushed past me, and a few low-hanging branches had left marks on my face. But I didn't care. I knew where she was, and I didn't plan to start stopping now. When I eventually did stop, I was out of breath, standing in front of a cave I had never even known existed until this very moment. Whatever was inside the cave, I was hoping would be worth it. George arrived shortly after I finally caught my breath, letting me face the reality that I would set foot inside the cave. I spent a few seconds convincing myself that I do want Susan back, but I knew in my heart it was a lie. But that was okay. I could live in delusion. Mother's instinct, after all. Me and George interlocked fingers before entering the cave. It was profoundly dark, but that didn't matter. A little girl shouldn't be that hard to find. I scanned every rock and crevice, convincing myself that I would not want her to be dead. Suddenly, I realized that was my wishful thinking. I didn't want her to be found dead. She was my child. She was my Susan that I raised alongside George. Memories I could not recall before suddenly came to me. So sudden that I stumbled on air. Me holding her up to blow her own candles out on her first birthday, looking at her for the first time. When I thought she never smiled once, I was overtaken by a memory of me holding her for the first time, and she smiled at me. Delusion was an effect in my life, but that was only when she was ripped away from me. I realized that all these days I had tried to gaslight myself into thinking that I didn't love Susan, but in fact, my heart missed her so much that my brain decided to dissociate from itself. I heard a gasp from George and heard him stumble and fall onto the ground beside me. I turned around to see Susan, sitting in the dark, facing away from both of us.
Susan?
I heard myself say. Why did everything suddenly sound so far away?
That's not Susan,
George muttered behind me. I felt his hand slither into mine, his now cold. My instinct was to leave, but I already promised myself that I couldn't do it, not again. I can't leave Susan. I wasn't sure if I said it or not, but Susan slowly turned around. My curiosity rooted me to the spot as she turned fully around. I heard George gasp behind me, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Not yet, anyway. I scanned her clothes. They didn't seem worn or ratty. They seemed exactly how they were the day she went missing. Like time didn't influence her. I felt a sudden shiver go down my spine, and the emotions of pure hatred returned to me. There wasn't a reason to feel hate right now, so I didn't understand what my own brain was trying to tell me. I looked into Susan's eyes and realized why. Why did I feel so distant? Why did I feel hatred? That wasn't my daughter. Susan smiled as realization filled my eyes, and I forced myself to hold the look, my heart finally realizing what was happening. Her eyes were purely white. Her smile was inhumane. All my love left. All my hope is left. All my curiosity left. But my instinct remained. And it was to run. Thanks for listening. Thank you to all my young authors who contributed to this year's Kids Special. I hope to see some of you next year, and I hope to see some new faces as well. That's all for now. Now go drink some hot cocoa, go get some sleep, and happy Halloween!